Hi, my name is Lily Clayton Hanson. I'm an author, a journalist, and an actor based in Nashville, and also the host of Nashville Conversations, the video podcast based on my book series, Word of Mouth Conversations. Today, we have a very special guest on, the Mayor of Nashville, Freddie O'Connell. I couldn't be more delighted to have Freddie at the beautiful Ryman Artists Loft talking about some of the struggles artists are currently facing locally and nationally, and also his own artistic inclinations. Most people don't know this, but Freddie actually grew up with a pretty well-known singer-songwriter father, and he also studied music himself at Brown University. So stay tuned. We were so excited to have him on, and he was just a joy to have. I also just think it's so cool that I get to call you Freddie. Truly the mayor of the people. So I would love to talk about something that we both have in common. I always like to bring up something like that at the beginning, I think, to kind of form a slight connection, which is we both went a crazy long period of time in Nashville without a car. So I would love to know a little bit about how that informed your current policies as far as expanding public transportation in Nashville, which has historically been a car city.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've been a car city for most of my lifetime, but going back to my mom's growing up in this area, we were actually a streetcar city. And so I would say when I got back here after college, which was maybe even not really in the original cards, I thought I'd go to college and probably move on to some other place, partly because it didn't seem like Nashville was, kind of doing those things that was creating great, opportunities, both, from a job standpoint, but also those things that happen in bigger cities, like great network of museums. When we were growing up, we didn't have a zoo or the First Art Museum. The Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum was this smaller scale thing. And now we have this network of great downtown museums. And so I wasn't sure I was coming back, but when I got back, I'll just say there was, you could still probably have an interesting conversation among myself, my brother, and my dad about who really ran the car into the ground. But a car that I thought I might have access to after college, I didn't. And so...
Didn't quite make it.
And so around, I don't know, it was probably 2001 or 2002, I was trying to aggressively pay off all my student loans, right, from undergraduate. And not having access to a car, started sharing a car with my girlfriend. But I knew, since we were on different schedules and so forth, it was the first time I started riding the bus. And so it turned out to be easy. I met a bunch of bus drivers. They were friendly. Met a guy who was kind of an advocate for better access because he was legally blind. And started kind of going with him to meetings and meeting some of the management and leaders in our transit authority, and then found this organization called Walk Bike Nashville. Mm-hmm. Eventually, my girlfriend went to go get some pre-med credits, and suddenly her car broke down too. And so now I had 0 cars and that I had access to. And so it was an interesting period of trying to really, become debt-free, start to save up money. And I thought, okay, maybe I can pull this off for a year. That turned into 3.5 years. As I was doing that, organizations like Walk Bike Nashville and the person who became mayor in 2007, Carl Dean, I think just sort of heard about my story. And I had, after working with this guy, James Manning, and learning about his organization, Partners in Transit, I got invited to join the Nashville MTA Board of Directors. I got invited to join the Walk Bike Nashville Board of Directors. And so I had all of these entry points into how people move around a city. And I was interested in that because I was trying to access the city without relying on a car for a long period of time. And I realized how, that 3.5 year period, I have never saved money more quickly in my life than when I was car free.
Yeah. I love that. And it's so funny because you said that you made friends with the bus drivers. I would too, because sometimes I'd be the only person on the bus. Yeah. And so you just sit up there and shoot the breeze.
And there were guys, I remember, it'd be just little things. One day somebody would bring on a fresh batch of cookies or something, and it's just all these little moments of community. But it was also, I remember later, even after I had bought a house and was still regularly commuting by bike or by transit. If you're on the bus, I mean, it was a great time also to catch up on reading, maybe even get a head start on work, for the day, like just check emails and whatever. And so that was also an interesting part of the experience of how either if you're doing active transportation, you're getting a little bit of a workout in and staying fit and kind of seeing the city. And there is this process of community, but also, kind of reclaiming that time to be productive instead of experiencing road rage.
Yeah, I love it. I keep thinking in my head that you'll have to do like a really fabulous like campaign about all of the like benefits, from, having like the time economy where you can like catch up on emails, catch up on work, you're reading, or again, saving money.
Well, it was funny because a friend who sadly is, I hope temporarily left Nashville, I think kind of, she just almost figured it out and it became almost a social experience because then she and her friends they knew they could get to and from a handful of bars and be a little bit more social as opposed to having it be a part of the commute. But she wound up doing it both ways. And we did a little video together a few years ago because it was just sort of hey, this has really positively changed my life to figure out, again, because I think people who have spent a lot of time here, in this current modern era, Nashville has a reputation as being a car-centric city. But we do have a transit system, and it may not be as big and robust as some of our big city peers across the country. But if you know what you're doing and we're trying to make it easier day by day, you really can move around the city and keep your cost of transportation lower.
Today's episode is sponsored by Freeman Webb, a trusted leader in multifamily and commercial property management. From stylish apartments to smart commercial spaces, they manage it all with care and compassion, driven by a daily mission to provide exceptional service and build meaningful connections with everyone they encounter. Discover your next home or workspace at www.freemanwebb.com. Well, not to switch gears too dramatically, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about your musical background. I feel like I do pretty exhaustive research on everyone I speak to because I'm just very appreciative of their time. But I know your father was a songwriter.
Yep.
You also study music, but I couldn't find that much stuff about either of these things. And they were so interesting.
Yeah. So it's funny because my dad has maybe one of the most Nashville stories of anybody where wrote a song for Johnny Cash like in the 70s. And I think literally went to a book signing, gave him a tape, never heard back. Then wound up actually, and I was at this show at the old Sutler in Nashville. My brother's band backed my dad. And it was a joint show with John Carter Cash, Johnny's son,
who
my dad had kind of gotten to know a little bit. And he's like, hey, look, I gave your dad this tape a long time ago. And John Carter's like, well, let me listen to it first. And he called my dad back. And he's like, okay, you got me. I'm going to give this to my dad. And he did. And as he tells the story, it was Johnny was like, oh, I know this song. I love this song, but I lost the tape a long time ago. But then unbeknownst to my dad, Johnny and Rick Rubin went out into the cabin out off the lake and, up in Hendersonville and recorded my dad's song. And nobody ever told him until after Johnny Cash had died. My dad was literally standing in Tower Records on West End and, had a That's My Song moment when he looked at the unearthed box set and kind of the tracks that were on there. And so there he was as one of the last people to ever get a song recorded by Johnny Cash. It was it's kind of a songwriter's dream story, but also, that interesting moment where total dream of a songwriter, but not, it's not like there's a difference even between having a song that gets recorded, but not being in that same music growth space of churning out number one hits. I mean, my dad would always talk about the impact that, people like Chris Christopherson had. And I think he always loved the craft of songwriting more than sort of the walking up and down the old music row and pitching your songs and co-writing and all that stuff.
Love the art, load the business. Yes.
I think there was a little bit of that to it. But yeah, we grew up in a house where there's a, bookshelf full of vinyl records. My dad has a reel-to-reel still in the den. And every now and then, my brother and I would see him recording a demo. He plays harmonica. So sometimes he'd pull something off the shelf, throw it on and play harmonica along to it. And he's self-taught on that. My brother wound up playing bass, had a band in high school. They still sometimes get together for, reunion shows and so forth. And I love music, went to study it as almost an accident, and have done very little with it since, other than love it.
I'm curious though, I mean, because you're like a creative spirit at heart and you grew up in a creative family. Does that inform the way that you have maybe approached like your political career at all? Or do you feel like the two are totally dissimilar?
No, I mean, I guess I would say it this way. My mom was also a musician. She played piano and clarinet. And, again, my brother was in a band and played bass. My dad plays harmonica. I can play piano badly enough that I would never do it publicly. But I've always loved music and, got to see my dad do some radio shows through the years at WFSK at Fisk and WRVU at Vanderbilt. And so I've always loved that and have always loved I've had so many friends through the years that have been part of either owning venues or independent record shops or been in bands. And so I really feel like it is great to be able to have this opportunity of leadership, fully embracing the identity of Music City. I mean, I think that's also, it'd be very easy to not be intentional about that. And kind of, we could lose that sense of identity to a place like Austin, or even I remember there was this crisis article in the Tennessean from years ago that basically was like, is Branson, Missouri stealing our music vibe? And
never even heard of this place.
Yeah, I knew about it a little bit because my parents actually met at College of the Ozarks in Branson. And so they set up this strip and it's kind of almost like what has happened to Broadway, where for a while you'd have all these places set up with almost like a miniature Las Vegas, where you'd have a in-residence person who maybe was late in their career or resuscitating something, go to Branson and set up on this main strip. And so you'd have all these live shows that you can go see. But I think it's really important to be mindful of what makes the city long-term successful as a place where, yes, maybe you do have a nexus of the music industry, but also that it's always a place where people can create and work on not just music, but all the other arts. And it's really awesome now to be in this moment where, Dolly Parton's here. She's got a Broadway production coming, and it's anchored right here in Nashville.
Well, to your point, Nashville is, yes, a vibrant creative hub still. However, it has become a little pricey in recent years. And we are filming this at the Ryman Artist Lofts, which is a place that I have been a long-term resident twice, which is very exciting. And so I'm just really delighted to have you here. I know it means a lot to my neighbors as well. But I always said this should be a blueprint for places all over the world. And so let's talk a little bit about how the government can help make it more affordable for dynamic artists to live in Music City.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we just this year, it's one of the most important things that we've gotten done. So last year we had voters across the city overwhelmingly approved our recommended plan for a transit improvement program. So this is great because it means that now for 15 years and more, we'll be building better transit access, safer infrastructure across the city, a network of sidewalks that's more connected, and smarter traffic signals. So ideally, this whole mix of better traffic flow that supports transit, more transit service that doesn't mean every trip comes into downtown, and better connected neighborhoods with sidewalks and safe intersections and infrastructure. All of that stuff actually from, again, going back 20 years, helps the city be more affordable from a transportation standpoint. And now we have this great tool called the Unified Housing Strategy that gives us a 10-year plan for how we can build the capacity to make the city more affordable for everybody from a housing standpoint. I think within that, though, there's this question of, do you approach it from a general standpoint and say we need housing for everybody, or do you look at these kind of special groups of people, whether it's artists and our music community, and or teachers, and or first responders like police and firefighters, and or maybe anybody who's just a public employee,
hospitality workers. Yep.
And so it's a really interesting thing, because ideally you would say, hey, great, if we're creating a wonderful new set of homes that are pretty deeply affordable and anybody can live there, that seems like a great thing. But I'm torn, because I feel like communities like this, you can walk down the hall and know that you're in a place where artists are living.
Oh yeah, and absolutely. I would say we've got the best like art gallery in town. It's free.
No, it's such a distinctive part of kind of the, like this feels like almost an arts campus, right? And I think that's a neat thing, in the same way that I know there are some places around the country that have focused on teachers. And if you've got, teachers and other people serving the community, living in the community that they serve, there is a lot of value to that. Like if you can see the people that are, a part of that, how that community operates, and you see them as your neighbors too, there's a lot of value in that. So I think we're still trying to get, yes, we want to tackle the bigger problem of anybody struggling to find an affordable living opportunity. But we're also trying to be, as I said, intentional about how we're Music City. And so one example is too, we've done a lot of work on musician parking downtown. That's a piece of it. If you're not having to send so much of your income into private parking scenarios just to play gigs, in the entertainment district, you're offsetting that cost. But still, I feel like I want to put a little bit more attention on how do we create communities just like Ryman.
Yeah, I mean, because you brought up a great point, which is, you just said the word, it's a community. I mean, it goes beyond having affordable rent or the amenities that we have. I mean, I always thought that they should have done like an addition of like a recording studio or like a painting studio or a place to create, honestly, for your next concept. But
well, and so what's neat is you do have places like Peyton Stakes, or I know there's been a couple over at the north end of Music Row that they may literally take over an old music studio and then they put studio space into the residential community. Peyton Stakes up in Germantown did that too. And I think they intentionally wanted to attract a music community to that as a multifamily residential project. I think the thing that makes Ryman, though, the special part of this is that it does always have some measure of long-term affordability to the rent. Whereas if your market rate, to something you said before we sat down, you maybe already had to have made it a little bit to be able to afford some of those places. And we want to make sure people at the start of their career, or if they're switching gears in their career, that you've always got an affordable place to live.
Yeah, definitely. Well, speaking of affordability, I'd love to touch on something which has been all over the news recently. I know even The Scene did a really great podcast about it last week, which is the fact that fiscal funding has been cut dramatically to support arts organizations and even individuals. And so I loved reading, I'm an optimist at heart. I loved reading about how, Vanderbilt stepped up to really help the Southern Festival of Books. I know Oz had a similar experience, but for artists like myself that are operating, with like a 1-2-man sort of operation, and how can we, again, maybe curry the support of other institutions when the government isn't giving it to us?
This is one of the hardest things. I'll say locally, we're still very committed to making sure we have the right approach to public arts funding. We took office into a little bit of a chaotic mix where the Metro Arts Commission had these back-to-back votes that seemed in conflict with one another, and then another issue with muralists. And so we were very fortunate at the time to still be in a period where we had some surplus. We had, still some one-time federal funding, and we came up with a program that said, we're going to pay out actually both of the approved arts funding plans and pay out muralists and find a legal pathway to do the Thrive Grants programs. And so it was really good to be able to stabilize that. But we still have, I think, some lingering tension between these longer standing, mature, larger arts organizations like the Symphony, like the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum, TPAC, versus, mid-sized institutions like Oz and the Belcourt. And then to your point, these smaller, either individual or co-op models, or places like the Forge that are just now emerging as either spaces or arts groups. And then we have contexts like the Arcade, which is great because you kind of have almost a patron model there, where they've now got locked in some long time affordable gallery and studio space. But we've still got to figure out that system. And to your point, there's a couple of pressure points. We have dramatic cuts to federal funding through particularly the NEA that left us wondering if we were going to have the Southern Festival of Books this year. And I think, again, that's a place where we want to be intentional, because one of our other important identities is the Athens of the South. I do worry, though, about, we've had a tradition of kind of across the country. I mean, this isn't a unique to Nashville thing, but it's been also available in Nashville scenario where you've had major patrons of the arts, people like Martha Ingram, people like Tommy Frist, people like Steve and Judy Turner, people like the Ayers family who have kept the kind of Avenue of the Arts concept alive in and around the arcade. And as those generations turn, I think there's sort of this open question of, is there another generation of patrons coming behind them? Because you have historically had lots of federal funding support, but now we watch things like the Corporation for Public Broadcasting completely closing its doors, which means you may not even see continuity for great programming for all ages, things like, the PBS Kids programs and things like that. So that's one set of risks, is the federal funding landscape. But then this patron landscape, local sources historically have not been the biggest share of that pool of funding that's available. And I think there are a lot of questions about how we keep a stable and predictable landscape of funding for an arts community in a city that has had so much of our identity, whether it's Music City or Athens of the South, built around it.
Yeah. Well, I'm just curious. I mean, you are such a self-starter, and also, I mean, you've been an advocate for so many different organizations. I mean, prior to becoming mayor, do you have any advice for artists for how we can, again, I think explain the importance of art more so to the public? I mean, again, to hopefully reach those, philanthropic sort of, crowds that we might not come across in real life.
I think that's a really good question. I had known for years people involved with the Arts Business Council. I think that's kind of a great forum and toolkit that makes sure that artists also have access to kind of legal resources and the business community. But I think, too, some of it is just making sure that I hope that a lot of times artists aren't standing alone just as, producers of art, but also finding those community touch points. Like, I know for me, I started off as a very early member of the Bell Court when they kind of first became a nonprofit, and eventually helped them with membership and got on the membership committee, and then eventually was invited to join their board of directors. And it was a really great journey from sort of friend of the arts to now active supporter and kind of advocate for the institution. And I think there are a lot of opportunities for artists to be, and I think the hard ask there is, it's just, it is that invitation from a public service standpoint to do just a little bit more than you may already be doing. Like, yes, be that content creator, be that person who is a fully creative spirit, but then also bring a civic dimension into that. And so whether it is finding a space like the Forge or an institution like the Bell Court or Oz, there usually is some way that they are always looking for, whether it's volunteers or people like me that may be an emerging board member, like somebody that could do that. And then you really do get to network with people, because usually those organizations have a pretty rich either supporter network or donor network, and you can extend your voice as an artist in those forums. But I also think we're so lucky to have organizations like ABC or The Porch that bring people together for conversations, and the Frist hosts conversations about the arts all the time. I just was over there. It was a really interesting session on the plan of Nashville, right? Or they've done such a good job partnering as an institution with the Carl Van Vechten galleries at Fisk. And so they've had some joint programming, and that's a great way to, yes, maybe you've been to the Frist Art Museum, but maybe you haven't been over to Fisk's campus or vice versa. And so there are some great opportunities to also cross-network within the community. And so my hope is that local arts organizations continue to do that as well.
Yeah, I love it. Well, and it's like I always tell my artistic friends, I think it's just also a matter of having the confidence to maybe go outside your comfort zone and network with people who, again, wouldn't be living in our building, for example.
Yeah, and I think one of the still things that troubles me after the pandemic is we knew, obviously, the pandemic pushed so many of us into some kind of isolation, but the return has been slow and not consistent. And so third spaces really still matter a lot. And I feel like maybe it's more than just, I think there may have to be some things that it's like, okay, great. Yes, maybe you're a theater space or you're doing a visual arts opening or something like that. But I think there now has to be something almost maybe a little more relational than just we're going to flyer and poster and maybe even post something on social media, but reminding people that we have all these great things. Like I'm going to, I guess what amounts to a revival this week of the East Nashville Facebook page, The Musical, which I think is awesome. And it's at Dark Horse Theater. So it's like a locally produced, just wonderfully creative response to something that is as local as possible that's happening in one of our theater companies. But the funniest thing is the way I know about it is a friend told me about it. And I think that's also great is just keep talking about it.
Yes, word of mouth, the name of my first book. I love it. Well, I always love to end on a high note. You did something really great recently, and I had to kind of flip through a bunch of articles to make sure that it actually had come to fruition because that was a little confusing. But it was the Office of Fiscal Empowerment. I wanted to make sure I got that name correct. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that? Because I love the word empowerment first and foremost. And again, I feel like artists, tend to shy away from developing the financial acumen that could really help them.
So this is great. And again, it's not necessarily 100% targeted at artists, but I had seen this actually come up way back when Mayor Dean was still mayor. I think it got strengthened and reinvested in when Mayor Barry was in the mayor's office. And then we had a great partner with United Way, but it's this project called the Financial Empowerment Center. And it's now over 10 years old, but we've reconnected and reestablished a relationship with this great national organization called Cities for Financial Empowerment. And we're lucky to now have a funded position in the mayor's office that we just closed, I think, an offer with a candidate who will be joining our economic and community development team. And it's a great program. It provides absolutely free of charge, no income restrictions, financial counseling, and can comprehensively connect people to resources. And so I had a friend years ago who was able to take advantage of it to become a first-time homeowner. It's a really great thing. And they've had a track record over a decade now of helping people eliminate millions of dollars of generally bad debt, like credit card debt, and then increase savings by millions of dollars just by helping people kind of take financial control of their lives. And to your point, use a model of empowerment. And so it's a great program. We're reinvesting in it directly from the mayor's office. We have a great long-term partner in United Way. And my hope is this lets people take even more advantage of getting their finances in order to become those successful creators and artists, but also to find that part of a pathway to affordability in Nashville. If there are, benefits you didn't know were available or other offsets to cost of living that you didn't know were available, if you can shave hundreds of dollars a month off of debt and convert that into savings, the more likely you're going to be to have a down payment or at least have a nest egg for whatever it is you need to do, or, put that into a production of some kind. And so, we're very, very excited about the Financial Empowerment Center getting a big boost directly from our office later this year.
Well, sign me up. Point me in the right direction. I will be like one of the first people there.
Details.
I love it. Well, I can't thank you enough for joining us. You have way more important things to be doing beyond this conversation today.
Conversations, as you know, are very important too, though. This is, to me, a core part of this isn't me taking time out to do it. This is me using my time wisely.
Freddie, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.